Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Rhianna and today I want to talk about my favourite books of 2024. So in 2024 I set myself the goal of reading 36 books and I ended up reading 45, which is cool. I read quite a variety of books and I think I will make another video where I talk about every book I read this year and maybe say a little bit about each one. But in this video I just want to talk about my top 10 books of the year. And to get an idea of what kind of books I like to read, I predominantly read literary fiction, but I also enjoy fantasy, and I feel like those two genres make up a lot of what I read. So this list contains mainly literary fiction with one fantasy book on it, or arguably two fantasy books, but mainly literary fiction. And so let's get started. Here are the books. So the first one is Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. Here is the logline. It's Rhianna obsessively takes explicit photographs of the average-looking men she persuades to model for her, scouted from the streets of Newcastle. And this novel has ended up on my list because I think it had one of the clearest and most original voices of the books that I read this year. The character of Rhianna is unhinged and crazy and not very likeable either, and at times, or really most of the time, not really that nice to read about. But she's also really well defined. I read the audiobook of this, read by the author, and having Irina's voice in my head was really quite a unique experience. And I think you will like this book if you like reading about unhinged female protagonists, if you like reading about books that look at morality, and if you like reading books where some like bad stuff happens. Okay, coming in at number 9 is very different to Boy Parts, and it's Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. And the logline for this is Bill Furlong, a coal merchant and family man, makes a discovery which forces him to confront both his past and the complicit silences of a town controlled by the church. And this is only a short book. I read it on a train journey from Brussels to Berlin. 2 train journeys, I transferred in between. And the main idea of this book is this question: is it better to ignore a wrong if it keeps you safe, or expose that wrong and in turn risk you and your family's lives? And I think that's quite a challenging question, and a question that the novel explores really well, because Bill, the main character, he lives quite a quiet life, and the novel is set during Christmas and it's quite atmospheric, and you feel the quiet kind of perceived serenity of this town, and then he sees something which is not right and is disturbing, and he doesn't know what to do with that information and how to act on it. And this novel does show don't tell really well, because it shows you kind of what is happening and allows you to kind of put 2 and 2 together and discern what Bill saw, in the same way that Bill is trying to determine what he saw and what it means. And I think you will enjoy this book if you enjoy short novels that are impactful, if you enjoy a wintry small town setting, and also if you yourself have thought about decisions in relation to what is right and what is easy. Okay, number 8 is Convenience Store Woman. And my logline for this is just going to be Kiko loves working at a convenience store. Because that is really what the book is about. It's about a woman who just really wants to work at a convenience store. And you might think, where is the conflict in that? But the conflict arrives from how people around her think it's odd that she wants to spend her life working in a convenience store because of the societal expectations surrounding a career. And I think this novel really inspired a lot of internal discussion within me about jobs and careers. And I think you would enjoy this novel if you like short novels that are quite quirky and offbeat. Also, if you enjoy characters that have like quite humorous and relatable observations about things. Also, if you yourself have ever liked something that people might perceive as strange or not really understand, then I think you could relate to Kyoko and how she just wants to work in a convenience store and people don't really understand that. Next is Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. The logline for this is 2 young people meet in a pub in southeast London and form a relationship following on from this. I really enjoy stories that look at romantic relationships, and this was one of my favourites of the year. I think in particular because of the prose. It's really lyrical and there are so many beautiful lines, such as this one. It's about the fear that you can feel when falling in love, the anxiety that that creates, because it's quite a vulnerable thing to fall in love with someone else. It also looks at what it is to be alive in London in the modern day, and looks at some of the challenges and issues with being in that environment. And I think you would enjoy this book if you enjoy stories that are about romantic relationships. If you like novels like Normal People by Sally Rooney, this would be one to try. Next we have Prophet Song by Paul Lynch. A fearless portrait of a society on the brink as a mother faces a terrible choice. So this novel was really good. I think this novel is the only novel of the year that made me shake, that offered quite a physical response. And that is because it looks at the really serious and real topic of a country falling deeper and deeper into despair. At the beginning of the novel, we follow Eilish as she and her family live a relatively normal life. There are some mutterings under the surface of things politically not being okay, but things are fairly ordinary. And as the novel goes on, things get worse and worse and worse. And that slope into chaos really you feel it in your chest. I think the last third of this novel I listened to with my mouth agape. There is a part, and this maybe is a mild spoiler, so don't listen to this part if you're not wanting to be spoiled, but it's not a severe one. There's a part in the novel where the mother is looking for her son, and she can't find him. She's going around to different hospitals, different places, struggling, travelling to these different places because of the violence that is on the street, and she's desperately trying to find out what happened to her son. And it was so fear-inducing. You really feel her pain in those moments. And I really think anyone can enjoy this novel, no matter what your tastes usually are. But I think you would enjoy this novel particularly if you like stories that look at how politics can affect everyday life. Also, if you like stories about motherhood and the challenges of this. Also, if you enjoy stories that really do tension well. If you like feeling yourself slowly getting more and more stressed from a scenario, but like pleasantly stressed, because how amazing that words can incite that response from you. Okay, next we have Circe by Madeline Miller. In the house of Helios, god of the sun and mightiest of the Titans, a daughter is born. But Circe is not really like the other gods. So why I really liked Circe is because the character of Circe is so well written. You come to understand her so well, and even though she makes decisions that aren't always the right ones, I think she is a very likeable character, and I got very attached to her and her voice. What I also like about this novel is how it makes the Greek gods quite accessible. I've always found it a bit overwhelming because there's so much content out there about all the different gods that I wasn't quite sure where to start. I know bits and pieces about like Zeus and such, but I don't really know about all of them because it feels like quite a task to know about all of the Greek gods. And so I always found it quite daunting. But Circe is a really good entry point, I think, because although we are following the story of Circe really from when she was born throughout her life, we also see other gods. And I think you would enjoy this novel if you really enjoy character studies. Also, if you like a story that feels grounded, but that also has some fantastical elements. I think if you like literary fiction and fantasy, this is a really good bridge in between the two. Next, I have 30 minutes and 38 seconds in the Strange World by Elif Shafak. Each minute after Layla's death brings a new memory. So this novel is about Layla, and after she dies, in the 30 minutes and 38 seconds after she dies, she really recounts her life story. We see all these big important moments that she lived throughout her life. As a consequence, you get very attached to the character and you come to understand her really well. And even though from the beginning of the novel you know Layla has died, it becomes quite sorrowful when halfway through the novel the 10 minutes and 38 seconds is up and Layla is going to leave the reader because she's now recounted her life and she will then die. I also think it's quite challenging to get a life story to be completely engaging all the time because there is no like direct plot. Like it's kind of like one scene is following from the other scene, but at the same time you are just telling a life story. So it's not like they all fit together. But actually I think Elif Shafak did such a good job at making it feel like all the beats of Layla's life really fit together to build her as a character. And also you have the tension because you're aware that once this 10 minutes and 38 seconds is up, she's then going to leave us. I was very intrigued about where the story would go once Layla left us. And I really enjoyed the second half of the novel, which has a kind of different vibe. We follow Layla's friends as they try to give her the burial that she would have wanted. And it is quite funny, this part, and it also speaks to what is left of us when we die. And I think you would enjoy this novel if you really enjoy character studies and getting to know one particular character really well. I think also if you enjoy stories about life and what it is to live a life, what it means to be a human in this world. Okay, we're now on the top 3. Finally, I feel like I've been talking for a while. I feel like this is going to be difficult to edit. Okay, let's try it. Top 3. So, 3 is All Fours by Miranda July. When a woman decides to drive from Los Angeles to New York, she stops off at a motel, and instead of continuing her journey to New York, she decides to redesign the motel room she is staying in. And I love how unhinged this premise is, and I knew that I would probably like the book from that premise because I've been thinking a lot about free will and how we feel restrained in our lives, which we are because of money. You need money to do things, but we also have such masses amount of free will that I especially don't feel like I really wield to the full extent that I could. And this novel is really about being a woman in your middle age and kind of rediscovering yourself, but that makes it sound a bit cliche and a bit cheesy, which it isn't. It's really funny and relatable. It's also quite different because I think the voice of the protagonist is different to anything I've read before. You could say that she's similar to certain other characters, but I do think she's quite singular in her voice. And you don't always agree with the decisions that she makes. She becomes quite obsessed with this man that works at a Hertz garage. And I couldn't really understand her obsession, but also I respected her for it. Sure, why not become obsessed with this man? It's also plotted really well. I think sometimes literary fiction novels that are kind of just about life maybe don't have such a plot, but I really felt like this story was really well outlined. So I gotta give it props for that. And I made a whole review about this book and about why I think it's a modern classic. So if you're interested in that, I'll leave the link down below. Okay, number 2 is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. This novel is about Peter and Ivan, who are brothers, and they've recently lost their father, and it follows them as they deal with the aftermath of this and also their romantic relationships and their relationship with each other. And I love Sally Rooney's books. I think she really captures well the human experience and what it is to communicate and to love, and all those small moments that are quite mundane but also quite fascinating at the same time. And I think all of Sally Rooney's books, they really encourage empathy and try to make you see different perspectives and try to make you really see what it is like to live in someone else's shoes. And really the highlight of this novel for me was probably Ivan and his relationship with Margaret. Ivan is in his early 20s, Margaret is in her mid-30s. There's quite an age gap, and I think I would typically maybe be a bit judgmental towards that. But this book changed my mind, I think, because Ivan and Margaret, you can really see that they have such a bond and such a connection with each other, and I think it can be rare to find that. And it's horrible to feel lonely, and if you find something that makes you feel not alone, it makes you feel connected to someone else. Does it really matter if there's an age gap, if you're both consenting adults? So it kind of changed my opinion on that. So now number one is Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. And I know for every other novel on this list, I made a logline. For this one, I don't know how to make a logline. This book is so epic that it's really hard to fit it into 1 or 2 sentences. We follow 3 characters as well, so you kind of need to make a summary for each of the 3 characters to describe what this book is about. Really, this book was so impressive, and I think challenged my opinion on what is possible with a novel, because it feels like it created a whole world that actually exists, even though it doesn't exist. But it feels like it has to exist because it's created it. Brandon Sanderson created the world so flawlessly. Okay, so those were my top 10 books of the year. Let me know, what book did you love reading this year? And I will see you in another video soon. Bye bye.